Here it is. Perfect. So again, welcome everyone. And I'm going to introduce now the graduate program director for the Master of Interior Design program, which you're here to see. It's Louis Weinfeld. She's going to take over and do the presentation with you guys. And so, Louis, all yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel, and welcome everyone. It is really wonderful. Even if I'm just seeing your names, I know so many of you and really delighted that you're here joining us with interest in this program. It is very exciting that we finally have the Master of Interior Design professional degree, post-professional degree, ready to be launched for this coming fall. And I'm just going to start sharing our presentation with you, and let's see, make sure everything works here. So hopefully you can see my presentation. Excellent, great. So welcome to Interior Design in the Creative School, and hopefully you are here for the information session for this program. And before we begin, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. And so welcome to our information session. I'm really excited about sharing information about the program with you. As some of you know, it's been in development for quite a while, and this is the launch of our post-professional one-year program. It runs one full year starting this fall. It goes from fall to winter and into the spring, summer. And the whole kind of point of this program is for someone who already has an undergraduate degree in the professional area of interior design. It could also be architecture, but ready to take that next leap into doing something that is really about a thesis level project, something that is goes beyond what you've done in an undergraduate program and really begins to build upon a body of research that you're interested in. And so for some of you that may be coming directly from practice and been out of school for a while, working for a number of years, it's a nice way of also taking that information and just kind of the questions that have been built up over the years and thinking about how that can begin to form a thesis question where you have, in some ways, I feel like it's this wonderful time of the year to be able to develop a project. And while we have no current student work to pull from, what I'm doing in this presentation is showing some of the things that may look familiar to some of you, but it's more of the idea of what can happen in a project. And as I walk you through this presentation, it's not too long, it'll be pretty fast, so we can then focus on questions that you might have or just begin to share more information about the program. But I want to focus on this project in specific by a student who graduated a couple of years ago because it was part of the Steel Case student competition. And what I love about this is that it was a creative project that was prompted by a competition, and the student was able to kind of just like run with all the criteria and got an honorable mention in this nationwide competition. And what's great about it is that somebody really had to think about what drives their project, and not something where you're given, every single bit of information like you are in a studio course, but it's something that's almost more independent from that. And that's what this next level is with a master's program. It's something that does begin to say, well, what are the things that I'm interested in? How do I begin to develop all the parts of how I shape a project? Is it more theoretical? Is it more practical? Is it a combination of the two? And so that's where the creative project really is the heart of this program, where it really should be what is your interest and then begins to drive that creative project for a year-long development. And at the end of it, it becomes this really kind of, solid, sometimes we call it a thesis, but it's also a creative work as well. And the two really go hand in hand. So that's where we're starting. And then there's also electives that begin to support the project. These are just a few that are existing electives within the program that some of you might be familiar with or have taken in the past, but the Master of Interior Design has graduate studies electives that are open up in the whole creative school at the graduate level. So while I'm showing some that are within the School of Interior Design that undergraduates take, there's a whole new body of electives that open up at the graduate level. But I always just like showing these because it's about, things or looking at areas that you have an interest in and beginning to pick the different electives that will also help support your thesis project or your creative project. And it's going through the selection and saying, what are the ones that will really help me begin to think about my project in a way that I haven't really had a chance to, that is, actually kind of adjacent or tangent to the discipline of interior design. So those are a few areas that you might be looking at. And then for those of you that are familiar or not familiar, we have amazing facilities in the school. And over the years, there's been a lot of work to kind of redo a lot of the spaces, especially while there was downtime when the building wasn't occupied, but coming back, there's been an opportunity, especially from Amanda and Carol in the workshop, to be able to redesign some of the spaces and really kind of think about how we're using the spaces as we enter into this new phase of a graduate program that also has a dedicated space in the school. That's one of the things that goes along with graduate studies is being able to have a space where you can collaborate and work together and share ideas and critique one another and be able to just build and learn from one another in a graduate studies space. So we have our design center that I think you might be familiar with or seeing in our facilities, and our wonderful workshop where a lot of making takes place with our amazing staff in the workshop, but also the different technology labs that we have available to us, to our students in the school, using amazing things to be able to forge new ways of working. And as mentioned with design studio support spaces, the graduate program really is about bringing graduate students together. And as a cohort, you get to know one another even, really well at this next level. And that's where we will have a space dedicated for graduate studios and being able to settle in, have your space, but also additional support spaces around the building. In case you're not familiar with it, where we have different pinup spaces, and just being able to use our building so that way it begins to support all the work that you're doing. This is from a number of years ago, but I'm hoping that in the next few years, we return back with year-end shows that are both online and in person. The past few years have shown that having year-end show online brought so many people together as a way of celebrating student work. And it was a new way of bringing family who can't make it physically in person or friends who can't make it. And so this idea of having the year-end show as a celebration of work, both in person and virtual, is something that I feel like the school has been great at building upon. And really it goes to the students that run the year-end show, who are amazing at being able to share work with the world so everyone can see it. And with the year-end show, it now means that we'll have graduate student work being part of that show as well, kind of a whole new level that we haven't had before. And a lot of you are probably familiar with our alumni that have always come back in and supported the school, or we find a lot of our graduates going into our alumni offices. But we know that a lot of our alumni are very excited about having this new graduate program. Yabu Pushaberg have always been incredibly supportive of the school, and their work is just phenomenal to look at and learn from. The same thing with Mason Studio, with Stanley and Ashley, who have been very involved with the school, especially with teaching recently, which has been great to see. And we know that we always have their support, and a lot of our alumni in these amazing spotlight offices come back in for reviews, and we're absolutely delighted to be able to bring them back in at the graduate level and have them share their ideas and thoughts to help further the ideas that students have in their creative thesis project works. The same thing with Bertie Felix, who also do a whole other area of design projects. Each one of these, I feel like, have different niches that they work in. But that's just a quick summary to give you ideas of, what we're doing, how we're taking our graduate program and thinking of it as a whole new level in what gets produced. That is very different from what happens at an undergraduate level. So I know this was brief, but wanted to make sure we have time to really answer questions that you have. So I will stop sharing my screen and be able to come back to all of you and see who's here. And hopefully we can help answer questions that you have, whether they're just logistical questions, admission questions, or questions about what happens at the graduate level.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah.
Hi. Whoops, sorry, my camera's off. 1 second. Can you see me? Okay.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me as well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you mentioned that it launches in the fall. So I was curious to know when people should start applying and what the application process would be. And yeah, if you can just speak to that a bit.
So in terms of application, Sarah, thank you. You should apply now if you want to. The portal is officially open and you can start submitting your applications now. Basically what happens at this point, normally we would have like a certain day, what we call a first consideration deadline. Now, because of the time of year that we are right now, that deadline in a sense has already passed. So at this point, we are taking applications as they come. The review committee will have a couple meetings every so often. And basically, as we get the applications, we'll review them, score them, all those different things. And then from there, we'll start submitting results as soon as we have them. It is kind of like an ongoing basis at this point because we basically keep it open until we are full, if that makes sense. Now, the way the offers work is we'll send out responses from admissions, right? We'll send responses to applicants. We'll usually give them about 10 business days or so to respond. And then once we hear back, we can either say, yes, we have another spot open, or no, that one's taken. And then we continue doing offers basically until July, August, depending when we are full at that point. I think at this point, in terms of size of the cohort, we're looking around 10 to 12, maybe 14, depending on the number of applicants. So it's a fairly small cohort, obviously a small program. So yeah, if you're interested in it for fall admission, apply sooner rather than later. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
And let's see, I'm actually looking at the chat here and there's a couple of questions. One of them is, hi, I'm a full-time designer. Would it be possible for me to enroll without leaving my full-time job? And follow-up question actually is about part-time. So I'll answer quickly the part-time one. Right now, the program is only a full-time program. That is a pretty straightforward answer. In terms of the full-time job, I think it does depend on the job and the position you have and how flexible your job would be. But it does keep in mind it is a master's degree. It is not undergrad. It is very different amount of work that you will require to do. So it does, it's not impossible. Students have done it, but be mindful that it is a full-time degree and it requires a lot of work. Lois, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. And so it is a full-time program, and because it is a master's thesis that you're working on, it really is this whole other level of dedication to the design work that you're doing. And it is meant to be something where you're fully involved, very similar to, the way that in an undergraduate program, you're really involved in your design studios. I would say this is even more, I would say, dedication to the thesis project because it's your thesis. It's something that is purely yours that you're developing. You get to decide, this is the area that I'm interested in studying or researching, and you work with different faculty to be able to develop that thesis question. And that's what happens in the first semester, is really taking a design seminar, which helps prompt different ways of thinking about how you can develop the thesis question, where you need to start going for research, how you conduct that research, beginning to build up a bibliography. So it's very different from what happens in undergraduate, but in a commitment, it's really all that time is so revolved around what you do with that thesis. And it becomes the focus of what you do. So while it's one thesis, it's really like having many different areas of threads that you're researching and studying that help contribute and build up that project. Because at the end, it is something that you present in a very different way that is pretty much like a thesis book that you're putting together at the end. And it's not like a booklet that you might do in undergraduate, but it's something that really is more of a combination of written and design work that comes together. So it has a lot of requirements in terms of the commitment that you put into it. I hope that helps. And we could talk more about the thesis project if that helps as well. And the cohort size, that is correct, about 10 to 12, but it is a little bit loose. If it looks like we have amazing candidates, and I know we probably will, that number might increase by a few more spots, maybe even potentially up to 15 students. But because it is a graduate program, it is meant to be small. So that way there's a lot of attention that's given to each student, and with thesis advisors as well, where there's one advisor, but also a second reader that helps support the student. And it's a very intense process where you're working and getting this feedback from faculty to be able to really go into further depth on a project. And I'm also seeing some questions as well.
I think Dina has her hand up. Dina, go ahead.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to the chat in a second.
Hi, thank you. Nice to see you, Lois. I was just wondering, I know that like at SID, we usually have TA positions for the undergraduates, but with the graduate program coming in, is that then shifted as a priority to the graduate students?
Yes, I'm glad to jump in and talk about this, and so glad that you raised it. It's really nice to see you, Dina.
Nice to see you too.
So one of the things that we are really excited about is that our graduate students finally get to play the role of being TAs. And I feel like all along, we've always had an exception from the university to be able to hire third and fourth year students in the undergraduate program to be TAs. But really, it should be students that are graduate students that are acting as teaching assistants, because they're able to carry through more knowledge and then bring that back to the students. So the nice thing about this post-professional degree is that it is students that already have that full undergraduate degree, that whole rounded out experience, and can now bring that back now that all the courses are completed in that full set of years. So it does go back to helping students kind of move through all 4 years and acting as teaching assistants. One other area that also opens up is research assistant positions. And so the graduate research assistants is also at a slightly different level, where the type of research that takes place is, I would say, more intense and or just more in depth, maybe not intense, but it really builds upon the knowledge of students that have gone through a full undergraduate program, and more responsibility is given to research assistants. And so that's where I know there's a few research assistant positions that will be opened up to students going into the program. Not too many right now, but at least a few are there, which probably works right with the number of students that are going into the program. So those are two opportunities that we do have opening up.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Okay, just to answer a question from the chat. It's about admissions and sort of how to apply. And question was, do we apply through the OUAC and so on? So I'm gonna just briefly go through the process of application, so sort of as an idea, and then I'm gonna post the links in the chat so you know where to go. But basically, the application process is a two-step process. So first, yes, you will apply via the OUAC application portal, which basically all you have to do at that point is submit your academic background information. So what degrees you have, dates, your name, contact information, You will also need to include the contact information for your referees, for your letters of recommendation. And then also, I believe you may need to include also a potential supervisor or faculty member that you may be interested in working on. That is not set in stone, that just to give us an idea as to who you might be interested in working with. Also shows us that you've been looking at their website and see and know who's in the program, who's teaching, who's available, that kind of thing. And also to make sure that we are able to help you and actually grow your idea and your research. Okay, so that will be step one. In terms of application, you go through the website. I'll put the link in the chat right now. You basically go in there, you apply, and then the OUAC will let us know in graduate admissions that you submit your application. It will take about, I think, 3 to 5 business days between step 1 and step 2. Step 2 happens when TMU will then send you an email saying, thank you very much for your application. We're looking forward to receiving your documents. At that point, they will give you an ID, an applicant ID, as well as links as to how to submit the admission requirements. So this will be things like your CV, things like your portfolio, statement of interest, all those different things. So that happens in the step 2. So what you can do at this point, for example, if you're considering on applying, is you can start step 1 now today if you want to. Give yourself some time to finish all the documents, get everything ready, talk to your referees, work on your portfolio, and then when you're ready, a week, 2 weeks from now, then you are basically ready to submit your application. Very important to make sure to remember there's 2 steps, because sometimes if you're running late and you want to sort of do it, and then you do the first step, you still have to wait those 3 to 5 business days. Okay, so make sure that that you apply there. The links I put in the chat, one of them is for the new website. We finally upgraded the website on our school, and you'll have a little more information about the academic requirements, but also more details about the non-academic requirements, which I think probably be very helpful for you guys to know exactly what you need to submit. And we can probably go through them now, Lois, if that's okay, maybe just a couple lines in there. What I'll do is I'm going to share the screen just briefly so you can see what they are. And then if you have any questions, you guys can probably let us know, and we'll go from there. Let me see, you can see that there. All right. So again, non-academic requirements, basically your statement of interest, resume and CV, the 2 letters of recommendation, like we mentioned, and then the portfolio. So Lois, I'm gonna let you, if you have any sort of advice for the statement of interest or any of those, by all means, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, that's great. And so the statement of interest, this is where we put a few prompts there for you to think about as you write it. And one question is your reason for pursuing a graduate degree in interior design. Is there prompts that you've had from previous studies, from practical experience, from professional, from combination of those things that you've now wanted to pursue? Questions that you've had that have always kind of been sitting in you, that you realize, like, this is a reason why I need to pursue this graduate degree, because it allows me the opportunity to work on this thesis question. And so that's really what we're looking for, is what your interest is. Through your time working in the built environment, what is it that really has resonated with you that makes you want to now pursue it at this advanced degree? So that's one thing to think about in the statement. And then that also leads to an area of emphasis. And this is really goes back to what does interest you. It could be about a program type. It could be about an area of sustainability. It could be something that's just personal questions that you've wanted to pursue through the lens of interior design. All of that is really open, and essentially what that is doing in the end, and maybe I'll also frame it this way, is that you're contributing to a body of knowledge, and that body of knowledge is part of the interior design discipline. And so what that means is there's resources that, whenever we're looking up information about a topic, a lot of the times a master's thesis will show up because somebody has done original research on a topic, and it becomes really a way of contributing back to a body of knowledge. There's different ways that we also present that knowledge, through publications, through presentations. And that's one of the things, and when I say presentations, that's to, it might be to professional or academic organizations, not just to a studio review in the school, but actually to outside organizations. And it's a way of also being able to be part of that community, to that professional community or to the academic community, and being able to contribute to that and building up dialogues with others that are also contributing back. One of my favorite organizations, it's the Interior Design Educators Council, and it's the academic organization for interior designers across North America. And one of the things that's wonderful about it is that they encourage graduate students to present in this conference. And so that's something that we'll also be really trying to encourage students to do. So I know that was a bit of a deviation from that second point, but just wanted to add a little bit more about how areas of emphasis can be anything from the personal to kind of big global questions that one might have. The next point is how the applicant's previous studies and experiences have prepared them for this program. And that's really, thinking about what areas have, I guess, really helped you build up the kind of questions or areas of emphases that you want to pursue. So if you're a current student, an alumni, a student from another program, or been practicing, really it's what have you done in the past that helps contribute to what you might do in the program. And then also just the career objectives that you have upon completion of the degree program, to bring that master's as a higher degree into the profession where you can promote yourself as saying you've had this one solid year of working on a thesis, a creative project, and this is all the information that you've gained and learned, and how you can bring that into an office. We know a lot of offices are beginning to invest more in different areas of research. And this is one way of showing you've done that year-long work of research and can now contribute that back into an office. A separate path that this degree would also prepare you for is to go into teaching, is to start thinking about whether it's part-time teaching or full-time teaching. But one of the shortfalls that the interior design discipline has is when all different universities and programs are looking to hire professors, one of the things that is missing are applicants who have a Master of Interior Design. It usually ends up being a master's from a different degree, but this one actually is one of the ones that has been missing for so long that we know will help contribute to anyone who's interested in teaching. So that's a whole other area as well. So for the statement of interest, it's 500 to 1,000 words. That's kind of like a big range. It could be small or a lot, but I would say use it to your advantage to explore all these ideas and write from what's really within you. I feel like whenever it's really sincere and comes from you, that's the most important thing, and it tells the committee so much about you. So keep that in mind. We want to know about you and what really has been driving you in the past few years that has now led you to want to be in this graduate program. So that's the statement of interest. And Daniel, should I keep going with the other points or?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Just maybe a couple of things about the resume or CV. I mean, obviously, sometimes a professional CV and resume is probably a little different than a academic, resume CV would be good. So maybe a couple pointers would be great, I think.
Yes, so there are definitely differences between, I feel like all different types of resumes or CVs, whichever you want to call them. One thing I would say is to, I feel like a lot of the times when someone is trying to present themselves, they try to do it in one page. And I would say for this application, do not limit yourself to one page. This is something where you should really shine and show us the things that you've been doing. It can be, all the things that you've had with professional work, with related activities, anything with volunteering, if things you might be doing, creative work on the side, but don't limit yourself to this idea that it must be one page. Really use that as a way of showing all the different things that you can do, all the different skills that you've acquired, all the different experiences you have. It can also include things like, travel that you've done and, if that's related to anything that you've done with looking at design. So use it to really kind of include all the things that list experiences that you've had, because that's who you are and what you'll also be bringing to the program. And we want to see those experiences because we know that when we have a cohort of students, that all of you are also going to be learning from each other. That's one of the things that does happen in a graduate program is, I mean, I think it happens in all programs, but as a new graduate program, we know it will be students coming from within the school, from outside the school, and it means that you all learn from each other, but now at this advanced level. So please don't limit yourself and list all those things.
Thank you. That's great. Just a quick note about the 2 letters of recommendation, just so everybody knows how the process works for those. You enter the information for your referees when in the first step of the application, right, via the OUAC website. And so what happens is after that, once we get that information from them, the graduate admissions office will automatically send them an email requesting the letter of recommendation. So in other words, you won't see the letter, it doesn't come to you, and then you send it to us. Basically, the regular referee needs to wait for an email from graduate admissions at TMU saying, here's the link. They click on the link, they answer a couple of questions with your name, all that kind of stuff. And they can either write the letter right there and then on the browser, or they can upload a PDF or another document if they already have written it before. The key thing here is that you have to make sure you follow up with them to make sure that they receive the email. One, I want to make sure it didn't go to spam or something like that, they didn't get it. And 2, that they actually submit the letter afterwards. So you as the applicant will know in your application portal what has been submitted. There's like a to-do list kind of section where you can see what has been submitted, what hasn't been. And so you'll be able to know, oh, this referee hasn't submitted, oh, this one has, and that way you can follow up accordingly. But just make sure you follow up, because unfortunately, until the application is complete and all documents have been submitted, we as a program won't be able to see them. All right, so make sure you follow up with them. You should get the email about the reference about the same time that you get your email from TMU with your application ID and so on, maybe with a couple of days delay, but it's about the same time. So that way, you know, follow up with them about a week after that, and hopefully that will help you. And another thing to know with letters of recommendation is give your referees as much time as possible. So try to contact them early, give them as much information as you can about yourself, your CV, maybe part of your application, your statement of interest, all the information you can give them. It will make their life a lot easier when they're trying to write something about you. If you have an amazing relationship with them, even better. But again, it's always good to have all that background info as well. So I don't know, Lois, if you want to add anything else, but that's usually the advice we give to all the grad programs, and it seems to work quite well.
That is great advice. So really should always give at least 2 weeks ahead of time before anything is due for anyone writing a letter, like at least 2 weeks. Even 3 weeks is nicer. I know from writing many letters for a lot of our graduates that having at least 2 weeks is sort of the minimum. You never want to ask someone, you know, like it's due in 2 days, because it means that you haven't been thinking about it, that you haven't been planning for it. So it means that, you know, suddenly it draws into question how serious someone is about applying. So please, you know, make sure you line up referees ahead of time. We want one to come from at least a professor who's familiar with your work. And that's because it is an academic program. And so it's really important that someone can speak to your academic, what you've done academically. And that way it helps us understand how you're prepared, but also a lot of the times they highlight things that are really, you know, key things that you've been doing. And it lets us know, oh, this is a really great strength of a student. So, so that's always really helpful to have. And with giving information to your referees, just as Daniel mentioned, sharing your CV is great. Sharing, even if it's just a draft of your statement, it helps them understand what is important to you. You know, what is important about why you want to go into a program, about what areas you're interested in studying at a graduate level. And that way they can draw on their own experience of having worked with you in a studio or a different course, And suddenly they can be like, oh yeah, I understand that, I can now see that this was an area of interest for this student. And it gives them a way to be able to write even more about your strengths and what you would bring to a program. So having those pieces of information are really helpful. And professors will always understand if you give them a draft, it's okay. They just need to know some of the main points of what is important that they should be able to emphasize, rather than just asking them to write a letter without really them knowing, like what does the student want to study and what is their interest at this graduate level. So that information is always really helpful to have.
And just a follow-up question about that, about referees. Do referees have to be pros from the interior design program?
They do not have to be. It could be a professor from definitely different program, different area of study. If it's someone that you've really connected with, that's great. It means that you've branched out and formed those connections. And so that's fantastic.
Great, excellent, thank you. I don't know if we have enough time to go through the whole details of the portfolio, just mindful of time right now, but I don't know if maybe top 10 or top 5 tips for the portfolio. That'd be great, because I'm sure everybody's kind of like, oh, what do I submit for a portfolio with this versus like, a job versus all these things. And one advice I give everybody is usually try to tie everything together. So if your statement of interest is telling you're saying you're going to do this, or you want to do this because of this or that, make sure whatever you say there, your portfolio is a way to prove that you've done something similar, you've done something in there, or at least in that direction. That seems to be sort of like a good general thing, but I don't know if you have a couple tips, Louise, that'd be great.
Yeah, Daniel, that was perfect. Like just that idea of connecting a portfolio back to your statement makes it so much more cohesive, and it really helps the committee see, here's a student who we can see how these ideas that they're interested in pursuing at a graduate level show up in the portfolio work. And so, so that's one really important piece. I would say keep that in mind as one of the top pieces as you reflect back on all the parts that you're putting together in the application. The other piece is that the portfolio should represent the pieces that you feel the strongest about, the ones that really are the most important to you. Don't think about it as, what do they want to see, but like what really is important to you, because those things that are important to you, I guess, once again, it goes back to that main point about these are things that you will be pursuing at a graduate level. It could also be things that were really just the seed of an idea that, will then be the springboard for what you do at a graduate level. So even if it's the most beautiful sketch and it's, it's something that is not a finished product, but it holds that idea that is something that you have not been able to follow up on, but we understand how it shows up in your writing and the statement. Suddenly we realize, oh, that's the piece that's so important. So things that are really important to you, make sure the work is really clear the way you present it. Don't cram one page with 10 million images that are all overlapping and we can't parse it out to figure out what we're looking at. So a lot of clarity is really important to have. And walking us through the portfolio, you can include descriptions so that way we understand what we're looking at. One thing we do have noted here is that if you do have any work that you're showing that you were part of a team on, there's a statement of authorship form that the university provides, and that at least helps us understand, what role you played in the different projects, whether it's from coursework or from professional practice, because we know, especially at professional practice, it really is about teamwork that comes together to make a project come to fruition. So that is there. That statement of authorship form does not count as one of the pages, so don't worry about that. It's separate from the 10 to 15 pages. But once again, just clarity in the portfolio, not cramming lots of images together is really helpful. Having nice, concise, clear descriptions are also important. You can add something like, the year of the studio that it was, so that way it's understanding what level you came from. If you're applying as a current or a graduate student of the School of Interior Design, obviously a lot of us will be familiar with it, but for those of you that are not and coming from a different program, having us know what level of study a certain project came from is really helpful. It just gives us a sense of, oh, this is what got completed at a third year level or a fourth year level. Things like that what you may have done in an elective course, such as a furniture design course or something else that may have been very hands-on, that's also wonderful to see. It gives us a sense of your ability to make and understand what materials, how you work with materials, what skills you have in different areas. So that's great to include as well. It doesn't always have to be, here's another, interior design project, all my orthographic drawings, perspectives. It can also be actual things that you've made, especially if you feel really proud about them and know that they're important. They show another layer of skills that you have. That's fantastic to have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And just one on the note on the technical side of things, and I saw the question on the chat. All of these documents, when you submit them to the admissions portal, must be a PDF file. Okay, so your statement of interest will be a PDF, your resume will be PDF, the letters of recommendation come directly from the referees, and then the portfolio will have to be a PDF as well. So there are individual link or individual places you need to upload them, right? You don't submit just one big giant PDF, you submit it individually via the system when you get the email from admissions. And if you're submitting stuff for your portfolio, obviously images and text shouldn't be a problem. But if you're submitting anything else a little more elaborate that requires something more than a PDF, we sometimes suggest is submitting a link that the review committee can just click on, and then you can see a video or a tour of whatever you designed, or anything that's a little more media animated will have to be via a link. So make sure you make the links easy to type, and if possible, make them a live link so that the review committee can just click on it and it goes straight to whatever website. Save them the time of typing a whole bunch of letters and numbers to each one of those long YouTube links type of thing, because obviously that won't be as good for you. It's better to make it easy, click, and off you go. So it is all PDFs, and yes, you submit each individual component. So your resume and your portfolio will be on a completely separate links when you upload. So hopefully that answers the questions on the chat for that.
I also just saw, I hope it's okay to jump in. I just saw I think maybe the last question that sort of just scrolled straight down to, but about how many projects should be included in the portfolio. And that's a great question that I think a lot of you might have. So I thought maybe I should just go straight to that one. And that's absolutely true that it should not be, 10 to 15 projects, but rather, use 2 or 3 pages to walk us through one project. That's absolutely fine to do. It doesn't have to be one project per page, but you might take us through, early sketches, early models, early perspectives, and that shows how that builds up into the final project, or even the individual work that you may have done that led to a group final project. So feel free to take a few pages. I've seen everything from somebody who may have 4 projects that they submit, but there's a lot of nice information that goes along with those 4 projects. And that could easily take up 10 to 15 pages. So it could be that. It can also include even a series of, any like handmade projects, things that are more physically based. They could be anything that was using technology or the workshop, or kind of anything. And even that can take up easily a few pages, just taking someone through a design process. So don't be shy about including design process as a way of walking the committee through a project and not feeling confined to having to show 10 to 15 projects, but it could really be a smaller number, but giving us more information about each project. And
great, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing. I think we're done with this particular portion, so we can actually see everybody around. Hopefully, there we go. There have been a couple questions about today's always in the chat, and it's about like the classes and how long are the classes and the curriculum and so on. Just briefly, and before I'll let you go on it. Most of our classes will be around 3 hours, if I'm correct. There's usually about 2 to 3 classes per semester, but I mean, that's still sort of going depending on the electives that you take or when you take them and so on. But that's more or less the overall sort of timing. So if you were to do quick math, that might be, between 6 to 9 hours per class per week. However, that is just a class. And I think that's where the part, Louis, you can probably elaborate a little more, is class is this much compared to what you actually have to do. And I'll pass it over to you now.
It's a great segue. So for the courses, the fall term, so there's fall, winter, and spring, summer term. And the fall term, I do want to walk you through this a little bit because I think it is important to talk a little bit about these courses. I won't go on too long because I know, there's a little bit of time left here, but the design seminar that we have listed is the course that's really meant to help support drawing out your thesis question. There will be a series of readings, assignments that you have, and those are meant to help start teasing out and refining your thesis question. So while we do that as a group in a seminar type setting, it's really meant to help support what you do in your creative project. And so a lot of that is actually also going to be feeding into the creative project proposal that you work on. The proposal is pretty substantial because it's the guiding document that takes you through even part of the fall term, for definitely the winter term, and then for the spring, summer term. It really is something that you keep developing and adding, and it becomes this kind of very intense document that begins to set out the map and the pathway that you're taking and all the steps that you need to really work on this thesis or creative project. There's also graduate electives in the fall and winter term that are meant to also help support your thesis work. And once, we're still building up a lot of the information on the website, but in the creative school at the graduate level, there's a number of graduate courses that you could probably already find, and a number of those will be open to being able to take those courses and see how they begin to support what you're doing in your thesis project. So that fall term is pretty intense, and the creative project proposal is, and also with the milestone in the winter term and the same thing in the spring, summer term, those are in some ways equivalent to a 9-hour studio, a little bit typical to what we have in the 3rd and 4th year of an undergraduate program. So while it is a 9-hour studio, a lot of that work is done independently, but you're still meeting with your advisor, your supervisor, but also your second reader. And so in an undergraduate program where you normally have your faculty instructor, here you have 2 that are giving feedback at a much more intense level into your project. And so the studio, it's not the instructor giving you a project, it's everybody, it's really just that. I think I saw a comment or a question about that, that it really is just the studio where everybody is working on their own project, but the time is set aside for it. And there will also be times where everybody is presenting their work to one another. And a lot of the times that helps everyone understand, oh, that's something that might be missing from my thesis question, or here's a great resource that we didn't know about that could be used. So it's really almost in a kind of seminar format as well that ties into studio thinking and that research creative process. So the winter term continues with a more intense look at interior design history, not repeated with what's happened at the undergraduate level. It's a completely different view on that. Now the graduate elective and the creative project phase 1 is really full swing into the creative project, into that thesis question. And that continues in the spring, summer term, where it almost even ramps up with all of your time going into the project. And there's going to be, it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of making, it's a lot of drawing. Those are the kind of baseline standards. You might be doing more things on top of that as well. There might be video, there might be a whole bunch of things, video production that goes along to support any work. I'm just kind of, knowing what I've seen other students do as graduate work. But there's a lot that gets put into that work. And so it's not just a regular studio that you would take. It's something that is much more invested with your, really building up your thesis work and making it original and unique, as contributing to the body of knowledge. And that's where it comes back to that big idea of the body of knowledge that you're contributing to.
Excellent, thank you. Another question on the chat, talking about studios and I guess facilities for the program. Would there be different studios within the graduate program, or would it be more of a general singular studio and those kind of facilities?
Yeah, so we are planning on having a separate studio space for graduate students. So really just a space that's carved out, and dedicated desks. Also trying to aim for having a smaller seminar space where it's a bit of a breakout space as well. So that way, if, for example, 4 students want to meet and discuss their thesis projects, there's a space for that. So we're really trying to carve out a space in the school that is meant for just graduate studies, just to help promote and support all the work that is taking place, and really making it such a important time for you to be able to invest yourself in the work that you're doing, because it is at a much higher level that we're expecting for how you investigate your thesis question. So the studio, though, it will be a time set aside. There will be a timetable that graduate students will get. It'll list your design seminar, the studio that you'll have. That's really more of the almost like a shell that is where you work on your creative project. Like that's the time that you have for it. But then there's also time outside of that you work on it. And the reason why the course load is much lighter is because you end up doing more of the research on your project outside of that creative project time. It's the same way that when you have courses and an undergraduate, you're still doing work outside of it. And it's the same thing at the graduate level. It doesn't just all take place in the studio, it takes place outside of it as well. But it is a basic course shell that really is where all of your studio time is allocated, but you'll also be doing stuff outside of the studio as well. So I hope that helps answer the question, but let me know if it needs more clarification, and I'm glad to help.
Great, thank you, Liz. There was another question here, and this is more about fees and the cost of the program, and so unfortunately we don't have a specific answer to the center, to the penny, or to the dollar. Basically, the way the fees are determined is I'll be honest, it's based on the provincial budget. Eventually that comes down to the university is able to determine fees. So I don't have a specific number, and that'll probably be updated on our website sometime in late June to beginning of July. However, we do expect the fees to be around the same as our other programs, which basically means for domestic students, they'd be in the range of $10,500 to $12,000 per year. And then for international students, it may be closer to I think it's about 25 or so, 20,000 per year. Now, these are just estimates based on our current programs. And again, so the numbers might be slightly different here and there, but it does hopefully give you an idea as to, how the fees are, what the fees are, and so on. The way graduate studies work is a little bit different than undergrad in terms of fees. So graduate studies, it's a flat fee for the year. So that amount you said, let's say $11,000 for the year. They are basically split into 3 payments. You pay a third of it in the fall, a third of it in the winter, and a third of that in the spring, summer. And that is your full fee for the year. Now, in undergrad, if you're probably used to it, you pay based on the number of courses you take and all that kind of stuff. In graduate studies, at least at TMU, it doesn't work that way. It's just based on the flat fee. So one semester you might be taking 2 courses. So the next semester you might be taking 3. And the last semester you may not taking any courses because you're just working on your final project and labs and so on, and finishing your thesis. Then at that point, again, the fee is the same either way. So just keep that in mind. There's obviously, I'm going to put a link in the chat about some scholarships and things like that you can apply as well. There's a lot of funding available in the graduate studies website, which you should definitely take a look at. as well as obviously student loans and all those different things that you can apply for as well in terms of fees. So hopefully that answers in terms of the questions for fee. And I don't have a specific sort of figure, but that gives you a range, and we don't expect it to be much more different than that, by the way. So it should be around that thing, and it will be posted on the website late June, early July, probably, once we have the final numbers from the University Planning Office. Thank you. And let's see what else we have here. Oh yeah, so this question here about in the OUAC application, there's a few boxes labeled potential supervisor. And basically this is the section where you would put the faculty member from the program that you might be interested in working on. You can find the links to the faculty bios on our website, and I'll put them on the chat in a second. But basically is almost anybody, any full-time faculty member and that are in the interior design program, and also within our faculty in some cases in the creative school. So take a look at basically our websites, see the faculty members, see who aligns with your research, your ideas, your proposals, and that'll be a good person to put in there, and one of those boxes. And Luis, I don't know if you have an additional sort of advice for that, but that's more or less what I think. Yeah, I'll let you take it over.
Yeah, so that's great advice. Yeah, so there is the distinction where it is meant for full-time faculty, and that's where all the bios for, and I think it's under the About tab on the School of Interior Design website. When you open up that, it shows people, and that's where all the full-time faculty show up. And really, if there's an interest that aligns with anyone, please list that faculty member. But also, a lot of the times there's either a supervisor or a second reader can also come from another faculty. I know some of our faculty in the School of Interior Design also act as supervisors or second readers to students outside of the School of Interior Design in fashion and architecture. It's kind of all across different places. So you may have also had a faculty member in a different program that you've connected with, and that might be another great resource to look at as someone who would play a role in contributing back to helping you develop your thesis work.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm looking at the chat, make sure we answered all the questions. If we miss your question, please put your hand up and let us know. But I hopefully we answer all of them in there. Let me see here. I don't see any hands up, so I think, oh, I see one hand up. Dina, go ahead.
Sorry. Just a quick question regarding OSAP. I know at the beginning it was still not sure, but like whether that would be like that's something that is applicable for this program or not. But it just needed a little bit more like applications or something. And so I was wondering if there's any updates regarding that.
Okay, there, sorry, I thought it was muted. We're still sort of finalizing that particular portion against it. All of that fees and OSAP, all of that gets sort of tied together. Last I heard, yes, it would be available for OSAP, but I don't want us to give you 100% right now, just because we're still waiting for a couple confirmations. I know we spoke with the associate dean recently, and she was going to try to get a final answer for that. But again, we're hoping it will be, we're expecting it will be, because it doesn't fall within the range of programs that is not eligible for OSAP, but again, you're getting there. Sorry, it's like a little bit short hand.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else with any questions, guys? This is the perfect time to do it. All right, here we go. And while we wait, I'm just going to put that link on the chat. This is the Graduate Studies website, Financing Your Studies page. And basically it has a list of scholarships, awards, as well as other ways of financing your studies. And one piece of advice I can give you is don't depend on one single area for financing your studies. Is not just your say scholarship you got. It could also be a combination of TA-ships, teaching assistant jobs, research assistant jobs, graduate assistant positions, marking, you can be exam invigilator. There's a lot of positions in the university that are for students. There's career boost positions as well. So there's a lot of positions that will help you finance and make sure that you make money as well as you're studying. Sometimes depending only on one scholarship, it's one nerve-wracking because you're waiting for that confirmation, I got it or I didn't. But also if you don't get it, what do you do? So try to diversify as much as you can, savings, and get a line of credit from your bank in some cases. Even if you don't use it, you have it, is there for any, just peace of mind is great. Once we have the confirmation, we let you know about OSAP and those kinds of things as well. But always try to look at different ways to do that. The website, Sandy, is a good choice for the resources that the university has compiled, and that's all built by graduate studies, the graduate studies faculty. And so they have a list of a lot of the scholarships. They also have a section in there at the very bottom is external funding. So take a look at that. That's basically institutions outside of the university that will fund certain projects, based on your background, based on your academics, based on your project, based on a whole bunch of different things. Unfortunately, we can't really match you with those things because you're the best at knowing, what you've done in the past and what attaches to it. So take a look at those. There's another way. Lots of money comes from those little places, but you have to go through them and sort of see what you qualify for. There's a question in the chat. Will this program suit me if I work full-time job? How can I balance between my work and my study? We sort of already answered that. It's a little tricky just because it does depend on several factors. It is a master's degree, so it does require a lot of time to do it. In my experience, the master's students who are able to sort of stay in their job while they're full-time, while they're also doing a program full-time, one, they're extremely good at organizing their time, and two, their job is extremely flexible. Because depending on the time of year, sometimes your schedule will change and you may have class during the day. Sometimes you have to stay and finish your projects. And if you're in your job, you're able to do that, where you tell your boss, hey, boss, today I'm working 9 to 5, but tomorrow I need, work to 6 to 9 p.m. or something like that. If it's also things that you could do, it's a possibility. But be mindful that it is a lot more work in a master's program than it is in undergrad. So just keep that in mind. The semesters vary, like Louis mentioned, in terms of the courses and what you have to do, but generally speaking, there is a lot of time you need to spend researching, working, practicing, creating your project. So there's a lot of those things that happen more independently rather than just a standard 3-hour class time that we are necessarily used to if you come from an undergrad program. I don't know, Louis, if you want to add anything to that, but hopefully.
No, I think that's absolutely right. It would be, I think, quite a lot to juggle and balance. You would need, I think, a lot of flexibility. Your employer would need to also be very flexible. I would worry about just getting kind of burnt out as well. Kind of trying to do too much at once and not really being able to enjoy the time that could go into really developing a really thorough thesis. So, I think it's always something about how do you find a way to really invest yourself in something that's meant to be so critical as a way of developing the discipline, but also having, the supportive, financial support that comes from having a job. But it really would take, I think, a lot of negotiating back and forth to try and make that happen. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So I think we are pretty much at the end. There was one last question about, I saw it. Where is it? Sorry, I lost it here, guys. Yes, does CMU offer grants for prospective students currently working in education? There's no specific grants based on you working on the education. I think, if that's an external working in a different educational system, I think your best bet is to take a look at the graduate studies websites that I mentioned there. Other than that, I don't know of any other sort of grants internally. If you do work at Ryerson, then you have to consult with your benefits. At Toronto Metropolitan University, I think the old name there. You should contact the benefits and see if they have anything available internally if you work at the university. If you work outside in education, I don't think there's anything specific, but take a look at the website. It might be listed as under one of the other external sort of funding sources in there. And one thing is, last question at the bottom here. Can we participate in this program online? Programming, just in case of being in overseas. Unfortunately, the program is in person. We are back to in-person classes, doing things online, not an option at this moment. And I think that is all of them. I think we could answer all of them. Last chance, going once, going twice. All right. Well, I would say thank you very much for everyone for joining us. Thank you again. We look forward to having your applications, to hopefully see you in the fall. Please let us know if you have any questions. Reach out to us. We're happy to answer us. Obviously 1 hour is not always is a short time period. If something will come up later on. So I'm going to put our email address on the chat if you have any more questions. And Louis, I'll pass it over to you to close the evening.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you so much for guiding us through this as well. That was really wonderful. And thank you all for joining. It's really wonderful to see your interest in this and all the questions you're asking too. They're fantastic questions, which I think show that there's real that you've been thinking about this and figuring out how to make things work and what's expected. So it's really great. So yes, please be in touch with us. Happy to keep answering questions through email. So let us know. But yeah, I feel like we made it through a lot of great questions this evening. Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.